I put a link to Judge Napolitano's. Every human's trying to do their best making these subjects, but they're making mistakes. They're the people with the research campuses. Why they make research easy or hard, or what's different about it. In other words, because you're using Google, whatever. I'm trying to say, we have black people's white bias, all that. I got into it. In other words, nature teaches us about relativity. They still have the theory of relativity. Pretending it's theory for syntax rackets that are manifest at countries A through Z. The interbranch are fishing dishonestly and as collusion/S at countries A through Z for where and how a breaching method forced them to lie relative to black people's rights of eye, even though our founders communicated other, even though nature does, and to pretend other simultaneously. The breaching method assigned identities of private criminal enterprises, time collusions with the overt criminal enterprises we can discern that we're only capable of being, and the terrorists. And then America's founders were born. Slavery was already entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies. The only reason that's not clear to everyone is because there have been collusion as a shell game too, counters to the campuses and the campuses kept victim/hyper victim, victim predator/hyper predator, the way the breaching method needs. Right where and how they're keeping their force as an answer to where and how and why they're keeping other things, others ourselves, blamed for where and how our founders. In other words, when you ask yourself why, think about why and how. We have black pupils, whites of eyes, and we didn't have that brought with the subject treatments, formally, informally, and or the difference of that. And we're going to examine how it's relative. Watch my last video. But Central Connecticut State University has Wethersfield police that recorded them involved with people with the name Scalora and Joshua Julian. His roles on the Facebook page of a principal upskirt nature. And they have roles with names next to campuses involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with the World Trade Center attack, and with cousins of theirs with different last names, people with the name Scalora, involved also with co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his family members, and Wethersfield police with Saudi attackers, and with WFSB and other police departments, intercities of Connecticut, intra-cities, and intercampuses and intra-campuses. There are a bunch of teachers I never had and students I never had classes with who were and are increasingly timed collusions with proven child abusers, leaders of the kids, years apart families, involved with other natures of organized crime acts and methods, designed specifically to keep anyone from speaking about the past, honestly, while everyone pretends other, anyone from speaking about what is active now, grouped, honestly, everyone pretending other, or sensing for the breaching method, anybody not, including if that body is a majority of people, including if it's everyone as a country. There's a breaching method that keeps A through Z, that countries that could only be operated by the voices of and natures of locations, areas, and states, as styles forcing other things other than themselves to be blamed for things that our nature is increasingly demonstrating to us, as the breaching method knew it would. A human fact should be nature breaching method is involved with all these problems. Now we have to after I said this, because in other words, people with Sandy Hook campuses, there are people involved with the state capitol and the syntax of the ad placement of the poor Sandy Hook victims. But in other words, there's an O'Brien family, and there are others I don't know the names of, and they're hiding their names and their motivations under the guise of wanting privacy. That Sandy Hook, a prison there, had and has collusions with with wire crime acts and methods, federal evidence is crimes of the principal upskirt nature, involved with other natures of organized crime acts. Also with the Wethersfield police chiefs retired, and a Leahy family that faked conversations with me, full fake conversations with me. I have one word of conversation with the older one, I believe is the father of the Brendan Leahy, but with the same name. I never had a word of conversation with him, and that was sarcastic. He's involved with a bunch of predicate acts methods, with a bunch of other names, with multiple courts and prosecutors, judges, and their family members, and the ages of the kids in their families. He's got a little daughter of his on Facebook involved with them with all kinds of organized crimes and murders and untimely deaths and body dumping spots. People involved with World Trade Center predicate acts with WFSB. Increasingly, people on off Two Rod Highway and conjunctions to it and Hangdog Lane are people that sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. People all along, they have collusions planting evidence on my street with multiple police departments with the same house/S since before the people moved into the house, involved with two police chiefs in their retired police chiefs in their intimate ties, involved with a whole bunch of different countries, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people with terrorists, the World Trade Center attack. They knew my Saudi friend before I did. People, they said their name is Kalal and Demoro. People with that name said Scalora is their cousin. They have been planting fake ties, fake nature ties to me behind my back since I was a kid. And they tried to make a fake exception, the opposite too. They do. Like, and there's no means to respond. And Glastonbury. They have rules with Glastonbury Intelligence, East Hartford Intelligence, involved with a whole bunch of different countries, including the Saudi attackers, people from Pakistan, people from Afghan leaders and kids. They have all kinds of people from Italy, people from Ireland. There's a Frankie Reese involved with Wethersfield Police, involved with Clinton Correctional Facility, and they had those people involved with identity thefts and frauds with them, including on Facebook, to cover up life progressions right at the timing of when they got released from that prison, the Clinton Correctional Facility. And these are also people with the Sandy Hook campuses and prison, involved with organized crime, acts and methods involved with the state judicial branch offices and the state corrections offices, involved with World Trade Center predicate acts with WFSB in Rocky Hill, and with the intelligence next to them, who are also sought me out on my street to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have collusions with the intelligence next to the state capitol. Increasingly, there are people with the name, a bunch of people tied to a former Mayor Gold, planted evidence. Like they'll be in a group and someone will take a picture of you, and that was their confession. So they make nonverbal confessions, like with people with the name Perone, Violet, and like Carone, two twins, and a Jamie Carone. They're increasingly people from the Britain Superior Court and the Britain's Central Connecticut State University has rules. I never had a class, never saw them inside of school, the Carone brothers. And the Jamie Carone, I left that class. It was him, a Jamie Carone, and a Joe Lombardo are increasingly involved with people involved with falsified police reports. Police departments pretending into their databases fake ties to kids with foreign and domestic medical families. Increasingly, people tied to a Joshua Stryker have roles intercities on off campuses and with intelligence families near me that have been planting predicate acts, fake evidences with FBI. And now they have the audacity to go up there and, fix that World Trade Center attack. Someone tell Judge Napolitano, Fox News, too, Fox Connecticut News, please. It's the intelligence families next to you. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has Thaddeus Skabowski involved right before a 2006 case in New Haven, district court case in New Haven, has rules with the intelligence families and with journalist places like the New Haven FBI, or the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has rules with a number of people named Demoro too, associated with Italy with psychiatry, right through world wars, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, involved with the with the proverbial devils about hyper archetypal criminal enterprise method that has countries A through Z using their names as systems tactical ulterior from the human species body of individual bodies, all group differences generated by its own. Central Connecticut State University is also a whole bunch of people from my grammar school, little kids when I was a kid and then as an adult, Asavia Bajario and others with family members tied to databases involved with sociology, psychiatry. They have roles planting that with predicate acts with facts methods, where all sides of criminal and civil cases and the courts and the news at the same time they collude with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people. I never saw him in the inside of a campus in my life. Asavia Bajario. He's increasingly tied to Ray Collo and people planting evidences with judges, prosecutors, and their family members, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, a whole bunch of different countries at the same time. Also with some black KKK theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, with the different interreligious spot nutbags involved with the child abusers, leaders of kids, and whiting forensics. Whiting forensics has a Phil Cololo involved with the Bob Chase. And they brought up the name Christine. They didn't give the whole name. And because of Christine Bedard is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by educators I had, they were forced to collusions with a Dillon family and with intelligence families putting fake things in databases before I was in a class with her. And they hid things from my parents that they should not have hid. With increasingly people involved with wire crimes and falsified police reports, fake conversations with police, fake ties to kids by police, increasingly with the same house, and one's tied to them with conversations. And they need to pretend it's personal between things, but that's recorded too. That's why they've been switching and forging names into branch. And their cousins were involved, and this is in Connecticut, and their cousins were involved in New York, in the court, between the court and other spots. As the court, Ninth Circuit Court in Manhattan, next to the World Trade Center towers, right before the attack, long term and short term. No, the night before and in that day, inside the court, it was proven afterwards there had been a sequence shift. The time-stamped date on the legal papers was changed from inside the court to make them appear to have been handed in late. There were people with collusions with that who also have collusions on interstates campuses and intercities campuses before and after the World Trade Center attack. These are also families on off fire campuses and medical campuses. And these are increasingly people with former police chiefs from Wethersfield and their intimate ties. Like reportedly, and I don't even know their names. I know one of their names, Reno Mazzucato, and the rest of them in my name. They're putting fake things. They're acting. The intelligence view me like intermilitary too. They have foreign and domestic military collusions with World Trade Center predicate. They influence acting, fake motivation. Increasingly, people from Wethersfield all along Route 3 through the cities who have links to those predicate acts and fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. A whole bunch of people were influenced to make it look like they're from other areas who have sequence shifts with the same house involved with police forms and departments switching names and forging fake transcripts and refusing to identify themselves legitimately that way, making confessions about their roles with multiple confessions tied to their police reports, multiple fake versions of it. So in other words, and then they put a charge with no writing. They switch arresting officers' names, the same ones involved, into like a bunch of people with East Hartford ties. I don't know if it's true. She said it, but she was a stripper there. And there were two strippers that said and people associated with them at the apartment next to on Covington Street. All the apartments will have connections to the houses there, which are intelligence families. There are intelligence families involved with a Gill family there that has rules with a whole bunch of different countries and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. Also with medical campuses intercities and with people next to Trinity College and next to Central Connecticut University as their connections to each other with that Gill family. They have roles with the Colol family and O'Brien family with a whole bunch of different countries involved with, and people at Hartford Hospital. And like with this Violet family, increasingly tied to body dumping spots and murders and identity thefts and frauds with their educators too. I only saw them one time real quick on the campus trying to make a big exception. Same thing with and their ties to people in my grammar school and the former mayors, increasingly former mayors and mayors from other cities and their family members and intimate ties. Collusions with identity theft frauds, sequence ships, confessions too, regarding a Dillon family. And like this, and people tied to this name DeMauro. There's a John DeMauro further with old Wethersfield locations. And his confessions about roles with federal evidences crimes regarding sexual and medical offenders of kids with people on Covington, on Church Street, who also have roles with that were used simultaneously to affect them to roles of various natures of federal evidences crimes and criminally foreign influence acting tied to fake transcripts and databases pretended, fake ties and natures of ties between people, fake motivations for it, which is the most important thing. And it's the most subtle thing, but that's what the breaching method needs to hide behind and through. Everyone blaming other things, others, ourselves, for its roles with your motivations, for example, where and how you guys prevent us using the hyper-evidential, so to speak. Having black people's rights of office, having the totally different species bodies of individual bodies generated by that which is not also in them, so we can discern what it's generating. In other words, they have two eyes too. Fish, birds, even insects are like that, etc. Our sciences have been abridged, but everyone wants to have principled treatments, debates, natures of debate reliant upon criminal insidious natures of positive treatment. Criminally foreign influence, fact, treatment, nature, quality aspects in nature are inherent, active, and progressive to the syntax of the people most passionately, the experts on the names of the people of science and the people countering that, and the exceptions, and that all sensing together, anybody trying to counter it syntactically properly. And the breaching method has them, adapt, show them how to adapt. We have to be led by the hyper invisible but still discernible and blame the hyper foreign. See, there's a difference between hyper criminally foreign influenced and criminally foreign influenced. And where we could discern the breaching method is where we could discern how it used the differences of guilt that it only allowed to be as the witch trials courts and their roles with the witch trials place right next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Also, the hyper-evidential is then and now they still have other communicated for that place, for those places, than our founders. And then nature, it communicates for us to have communicated about those places. The ones with the name Scalora also have roles with Orlando, Florida, and Miami, Florida, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved with these organized crimes methods, with also foreign and domestic medical families, putting fake transcripts and databases collusions from other locations. And they are personally and professionally with judges and prosecutors, time collusion /S with that. They have been collusion /S with all natures of crime scenes, the way the breaching method only allowed to be manifest. It maintains this an outcome /S. These are also names that were collusions with the campuses through time, and they are around. It would be ended real quick. See, the FBI and Weathersfield police and intelligence families tied to these O'Connor families. They already put me in fake and changed communication. I don't even communicate with my sister. No way. Because they've been doing this since we're a kid. They put me in fake ties, fake nature ties to people and the people in her grade. I only know this because of other ways I found out. But you guys can't afford a free. Get me off the fake conversations with WFSB in Rocky Hill. First thing on Elm Street in Rocky Hill is increasingly about people that were putting fake ties, fake natures ties to me behind my back in campuses. And as the ones that, with the intelligence families near me, ones that didn't even go to schools with me, they don't even live here anymore, involved with multiple police departments. And I caught them between the campuses and with names next to them, involved then and now with wire crime acts and methods, enforcing and intelligence families with the name O'Connor. I don't know them. They're making up things that with people with whiting forensics involved too. You know, they're not. They only confess part of the name Christine and a Phil Kalal. Phil Kalal was also further involved with violence on my street and identity thefts and frauds. People I don't even know their name. They're increasingly involved with identity thefts, frauds, putting fake things in databases, and people involved at Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University with this Kalal house, and people with the FBI in the Witness Protection Program with this Joshua Stryker and Eric Oliveri, people with the name Olson too, involved with it, all kind of people on all along Route 175 who confessed. I never saw them around anywhere. They tried to make a fake exception one time, and two times, and one in other words. With they're involved with Mr. Neville too, and people all along the Route 3 and its conjunctions to it and to that has something to do with it in the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices are increasingly involved with World Trade Center attack, and people with a Weathersfield Pizza, a Steven Stocko, and a Fazina family and their neighbors. I never saw a Maria Vizian on campus in my life. I never had a word of conversation with Steven Stocko in my life. No, in other words, they have something to do with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and intelligence families next to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, involved with them with the judicial branch offices and with names next to it and or just driving by when their syntax is. Where and how it is also relative, also the investigations of investigators and investigators that they are also used remotely criminally foreign influence / hypercriminally foreign influence though, and we'll all continue to get it wrong unless we bring the hype and keep the hypercriminally foreign influence in, and our black people's rights advised as means to discern it, not with the rebellion and how nature shows us to. Ugh. So, in other words, Subby Bajerio said that Jeremy Grohl is also involved with them. And then New Britain Superior Court said they have a Judge Smith also involved, planting evidences with people on Fairlane Drive, in the corner of Fairlane Drive and Griswold Street. A Jeremy Grohl and a Subby Bajerio said they have a Kalal family involved with them, with judges, prosecutors, overt criminal enterprise, private ones, sexual, medical offenses of kids, and their educators. They didn't say it like that, but that's what the value of it is. And I never hung around with them. There was like brief interactions I had with them, and that was started by them. Increasingly, these are people with relativity as rules with the names involved with the World Trade Center attack, interstates, intercities, too, and intra, but also as ones in foreign / hyper foreign. That's why and how they have like all these these hate groups and confused groups, and the counters to them as collusions. They're not legitimately, as I'm like, who's training them with the acting professors? Is that because of their roles with the intelligence? Because they have the intelligence, and they're this is also where they leak, like non-verbally. A former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has collusion/S with intelligence. The difference of the guilt of the intelligence at Fox Connecticut News or next to them. The same names involved at WFSB next to them. WFSB even attached me to fake conversations with themselves and others about the World Trade Center attack. They have roles fabricating transcripts and covering that up, preventing anyone free speech. And the courts have collusions with them with wire and mail crime methods and falsified transcripts, all kinds of evidences, rackets, and with the state judicial and corrections offices, and with names that work at the prisons that recorded per phenomena that's observable by all. Sandy Hook prisons had collusions with people at town lines, intercities, and with people involved with body jumping spots years apart, including a serial killer. And then covering that up, uses of the places to cover up things with their needs to hide live progressions and the delusions that have been used remotely too, and their roles with campuses. Central Connecticut State University has many tied to other countries that share roles with, like training how to run prisons and their family members. And they do, but their family doesn't know. And they're involved with the FBI Director Robert Luskin before and after the World Trade Center attack, also with the departments of the campuses used remotely, individually grouped and together. Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. It was and is increasingly involved intercities, with names involved with child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, first forced. And they got away with that because there are other natures and methods of organized crimes they had and have roles with, including mass medicines crimes and delusions at the same time with psychiatry involved with the courts and prosecutors and with all natures of crime scenes relative to that and having been used remotely with that, including to lie about their motivations and have real ones too used for that, by the breaching method that uses that remotely to keep itself left out, because nature demonstrates to us a human fact-attribute nature breaching method is an increasingly valuable scientific value to discern, because it's one of the things true all the way. For example, that all the laws were about as colonization's laws. And we would have brought up how the North and South were distinctly roles with slavery, but they were also non-distinctly, because there was also a foreign involved that was worse than all sides with colonization, and it still is. And it's clear as day that the Constitution stands abridged, and that's when they leak to when they want to have a nature debate. In other words, get me out for paid conversations with you guys, WFSB, so I don't have to keep talking about you and all these people tied to you from Wethersfield that have been putting fake things with their educators and their family members. And I recorded it's only concentrated with no, but a whole bunch of people at Harvard Hospital, but it's concentrated with people with triages and with the mental health care side involved with parks and taking fake exceptions. They act like all along Route 175. Eric Jensen, Joshua, Justico Vinskis, and some Corona brothers were influenced to act to make it look fake ties, fake nature, fake exception. I'm going there. And that's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, tied to more leaders of the kids, including a mother and daughter. They're both principals with the name O'Connor. I don't know if they're involved with there's an O'Connor house on Route 175. Involved with increasingly, I recorded people from off the campuses involved with interstates, with all kinds of medical corruption. That is also intermilitary and inter-services. People involved with the Tom O'Connor. I never had a personal conversation with him. I recorded. In other words, they have people involved with home break-ins in my area, and people that are personally tied to Tom O'Connor when he was a track coach, like with the name Klaus, who's also it was the intelligence community implied. They timed him, they influenced him to be at that corner where I was near the corner of Griswold Street and Fairlane Drive. Is increasingly too. As people involved with the FBI have been putting fake things in databases at the campuses and then pretending things are debatable that are recorded. And they've been putting fake things to hide that. See, they have so many countries, including Saudi Arabia, that they forced, to collusions with them, with the ones named Scalora and the other countries involved with them. Not just Italy. A whole bunch of people named tomorrow, recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed they have roles with medical corruption in Italy and in America, where they're putting fake transcripts and ties to little kids with their educators. In and intracultural, they have roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, specifically to keep the collusions that are manifest that way. Where countries A through Z have voicings that are collusions with identity theft, fraud, slander. It's no joke we have black pupils, whites of eyes. We have hyper evidential to use here. The differences of guilt was increasingly involved too. So they're trying to make a list and make everyone entertained, like the pretend that there's a law that we have to have faith or trust, when we know that we should not have trust in the names of the law. Wethersfield police have roles intercities with retired police chiefs, detectives, all kinds of natures of organized crime acts and methods, collusion /S, and with the same house /S, increasingly involved with them, with confessions over the phone relative. Then they had to put fake and change, digital and phone transcripts, and me being there as an adult too. And they forced the Saudi to collusion with them now, the Mendez brothers. This is not allegations. The older Mendez brother put me in big conversation. I never had a word of conversation with him. And when I mentioned him on Facebook, one of the Facebook pages, they made fake Facebook pages pretending to be me. And then they hid what on the ones that were mine. What was confirmed to me and confessed on Facebook. What actually recorded was on there. Facebook themselves have people involved with this, with Wethersfield, Connecticut, with names out the state judicial branch offices next to it, in conjunction to that, and the state corrections offices. All sides of criminal and civil cases and the legal bodies. The differences of their guilt, collusions, and news reporting it, they have self-valued sequence shifts as collusions with the high performer. Wasn't just Saudi Arabia and America that colluded with the World Trade and Israel and all that. Israel was reportedly filming the World Trade Center then. Even if it wasn't just a collusion, because the names involved would have Jew syntax. It's part of their rackets, where they have sense and sensibilities, fake motivations regarding their roles with the religious spots too. Robert Rodriguez is one of the ones on all sides of a church. And one of the things on the side of it is Route 3, which increasingly is demonstrated to me by people that have been planting evidences of writing forensics, multiple police departments, state police families, interstates, at the same time with the FBI, other agencies, overt criminal enterprises, private ones. In other words, names next to campuses, time collusions, all this stuff is recorded and confirmed. That's why they take people's Facebook pages. These are also people involved with the World Trade Center predicate acts. Increasingly, a Fianza family has rules with people interstates, planting evidences, fake ties, fake nature ties, roles. They act, someone takes a picture, but then years later, someone uses it. because they have roles with the state judicial branch office and corrections offices. In conjunction to that, use criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw. They have cultural narratives in nature. Their neighbors are increasingly involved with, and the difference of their neighbors' guilt roles with body dumping spots like a Sal Saviello or people with the name Pines on Two Route Highway. Also, some people in places associated with I don't know if it's even the same owners. I don't know who owned it or who was associated. They tried to make fake ties to me. A Rayclaw put his pellet gun in my car and put those girls there and some kind of on Two Route Highway. I just took them back. Then they try to make fake ties, fake nature, that plant evidence, fake ties, nature ties. I don't even know their names. Including increasingly, there are people with the name Delaferro who have roles with people from other areas, with judges and prosecutors, who are probate court judges, who have all kinds of untimely death roles and organized crime acts and roles with it. Fake uses of their family members. I only know the names of two of their sons. And the only reason I remember their names, to their roles of people I don't even know the names of that came on my street to pretend they knew me. My timing when I was going to be just around. In other words, increasingly people tied to mayors involve time collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people involved with the differences rackets. You guys have to allow free speech. Then you jump in our speech with your own differences, other people's differences, dishonestly, when we speak about the acts against the kids. You guys force the principal child abuser, and you're forcing more to be. And you get away with it by keeping everyone speaking through others. Bunch of fake punks. When did they have integrity at campuses A through Z? Here at the NIC. Why you want to leak more? Central Connecticut State University. Get this detective Samuda with the FBI director onto paper with the Dean Judd and his kid. And Bob, make sure you didn't pretend they had a word of conversation with me. And say sorry. Fox News, do what's right, please. Get me off the fake conversations of WFSB. These are, and their sources and themselves and the intelligence next to them are also ones next to you guys involved. In Hartford, Connecticut, involved with child abusers, leaders of kids, families, years apart. First rules with that because they have more natures of organized crime acts and methods. How many happen? You guys are using wire mail crime methods into branch. You go there, they're fucking nutbags. Switching names, forging names, making confessions, pretending not to realize. Watch what the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, was involved with. With more FBI directors, worse than criminal incompetence here. That's what this stuff is about. You have to say, what if everything was made up? What is it about? It's about their roles with the World Trade Center attacks, with predicate acts, with child abusers, leaders of kids, first forest. And furthermore, then and now, as actually recorded. But you guys have been pretending others are recorded. Let me share. When I said, what's Sandy Hook about? You have to say the same thing. What if he completely was made up? Just like what was witch trials about? Even if it was completely made up. Look what was simultaneous. There was slavery going on. There was the breaching method against Native Americans even. Because the breaching method, that which had slavery sickly distinctly north and south, but sickly non-distinctly. And no one brought that up, also as hyper-evidential. To appreciate the hyper-evidential, you have to appreciate the hyper-invisible, but still discernible. You have to follow mandated law when someone mentions predicate acts. Tell me who disbelieves. The interbranch have been discrediting me from backgrounds and getting away with it because they've been stacking predicate acts, collusion /S with databases with names next to the campuses I went since I was a kid. So fear God now too, because you guys have delusions. You guys are criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw fact, treatment nature, quality aspects of nature. Get the heck on paper fast. You want forgiveness, just say it and you'll get it. In other words, Christine, Bedard, or whatever. Please get them on paper, one name and sequence. Watch what I call your educators doing with people on my street, like this John Miano, involved with sequential. I didn't know him till that year. He was in the class with me, with you in that cooking class. Increasingly, people who were putting people in the classes next to me that I never had communications with. They had time collusions with people I never had classes with, Joshua Julian. Two, increasingly collusions with child abusers, leaders, and kids, years apart, who have ties to roles of predicate with names of predicates on my street from other areas, and with the same house, like this name Cololo and Smith. In other words, please, they're making everyone trying to make fights between each other, and they're playing games for a long time on all sides of my house with this. I'm not, no, in other words, with the smoke, the fire departments, and now they're trying to with the every time they can't even do a description of what happens when they go to instances, because there's a bunch of instances ago, and now they're trying to adapt. There's a new person living there now. Multiple police departments involved with this Color House, though, playing games. Get them on paper, one name in sequence, with the retired police chief still. Let's get them on. Oh, please, Judge Napolitano. And the Britain Superior Court, they have collusions with Harper Court's people and their intimate ties before the World Trade Center attack. Per the confessions and requests for help by Eric Burgess and people associated with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, their family members, their lawyer, all sides of criminal and civil cases, depositions in the interbranch at the same time with the news, collusions with all kinds of natures of predicate acts for facts, methods, and use/s of them. Increasingly, a breaching method itself has a scientific value. Is consciously, with other things, others ourselves, kept to blame. For even though our founders left us declassified communications that demonstrate some things, that's exactly what we were supposed to blame it on. A human fact-nature breaching method that had everyone rolls with itself, and then America's founders were born. No one had free speech. They declassified this. You guys get away with pretending that's debatable, then you pretend it's politics. That's why politicians never learn how to speak for principles. So they think up some verbs, some adjectives. Criminal and ceases natures of principal treatment. Or black pupils, whites of eyes would not have been left out. Vaccine. I just